Hello, all you positive heads out there. It's so good to be back with all you beautiful reflections of the one source consciousness that creates and animates all things. If you're new to this podcast, of course, we're super happy to have you here. And if you've been listening and enjoying for a while, I would be super grateful if you would please take a moment to give us a review on Apple Podcasts. It's one of the best and simplest ways to pay it forward and help others find the show so that they too can tap into the powerful perspectives and positive vibrations we are collectively emanating. The other unique and magical way to share this show is by sending any friends you think would benefit from listening to this podcast our Game with the Universe link at positivehead.com/game. Also listed in the show notes, which will serve them up a quote-unquote random episode when they click it. Just instruct them before clicking the link to close their eyes for a moment and sincerely ask the universe to cue up the episode that contains the insight and perspectives that they most need to hear at this point in their life journey, and then click to listen to whatever episode is synchronistically served up to them. I have heard time and time again from people about the incredible results they received playing the game. So just tell your friends magical results are guaranteed or their karma back. All right, all you positive heads, welcome, welcome. Here we go again. It is a fabulous Friday here in the studio as I record, and I hope you are doing just fine wherever you're receiving this broadcast. I'm doing pretty darn good. Had the chance to go to High Vibe Fest last week and still buzzing from that, feeling the high vibes. Beyond the event itself, it was a lot of incredible music and workshops, and got to talk a little bit about the project industry that I will be stewarding here in the fall. And yeah, if you listen back to the podcast with Ruby Chase, I talk about the more details around that. And it was a really incredible event. And today I want to talk about this idea of, well, sort of the contrast between insistence and persistence, right? One of the things that you've heard me talk about a lot on the show is sort of being such a doer in life and learning as a slow learner how to be more persistent, less insistent with whatever I'm working towards. And it's one of those things where it's different, right? We think of persistence as being, or insistence as being like strong, and I'm going to will it to happen. And I'm, sort of, sometimes it is represented by forcing a square peg in a round hole. And as I have grown and expanded my perspective, I realize being more like water is the path, right? You can continue to insist, continue to persist, but you're not trying to force anything. What does water do? It's more powerful than the strongest stone. It wears it down. It goes around things. It finds a path. And as opposed to, I insist, it's got to be my way or the highway, this sort of approach to life really wears you down, right? It really tires you out. When you insist, it's like speaking in absolutes. It's like beyond a shadow of a doubt, this is the way. And whenever you start speaking in absolutes and trying to force something, a lot of times that resistance, that fighting creates more resistance. So instead, learning to read the subtle energies and subtle cues of, does it make sense for me to persist with this? Does it feel in alignment? Am I still feeling lit up by it? Or am I insisting because of maybe, a lot of times we insist on things because of an old story. I've got to get this degree or else I'm not worthy, because that's what I was told when I was 12 years old, and I still am sticking to that story. And so, really being able to honestly address the difference. Am I just being stubborn in a sense to try and force a certain path? And when something is really for you, it flows nicely, right? It flows it feels inspired. If you feel inspired to persist, to continue down the path, continue working at something, then it's still joyous, right? And this idea that we have to see results immediately sometimes gets in the way of these things, right? It's like, think of breaking a rock with a hammer or something like that, where you are hammering away 100 times. And it's not until the 101st that you actually see the results when it splits, right? And so really learning to balance the difference between, this is something that I'm trying to force. This is something, okay, I'm continuing to persist and it still feels good. I think checking in with ourselves. Does this still feel good? You hear it even in relationships. I've, spent 10 years in this relationship, and if I quit, then I failed, right? A story of insisting to force something that's no longer feeling organic or in flow with who and what you are. That's just an example. And it happened because that kind of example happens a lot of the time. And so when you start to realize, like, I am constantly shifting, the only thing in life guaranteed is change. And my perspectives on relationship is going to change. My perspective on work, my perspective on who and what I am, the perspective on where I should go next. It's constantly shifting. We're not rigid beings. We are evolving, ever morphing individuals. And so I think that's this idea of insisting on something that maybe is tied to a story or a former version of yourself really gets in the way for a lot of people. And that's, once again, not to be confused with, I am still interested in being a musician or an actor. This is something that a lot of people, the arts, this persistence, they question sometimes. Well, am I doing the right thing? Am I wasting my time? Am I ever going to make it? And it's like, well, something like that. I would urge you to look, am I making art today? Okay, then you're an artist. You have succeeded. You are doing the thing. Does it still feel exciting to you to do? Then persist, then continue. Don't insist if you're no longer lit up about it. Finding that path. A lot of times with these big breakthroughs, it's falling down 8 times and you stand up 9, right? You get that, you have that big breakthrough from a healthy sense of persistence. Insistence is going against the flow of what was wanting to happen and what is arriving as your highest and greatest excitement. And, we've all heard that the idea, follow your bliss and, do something you love and you never work a day in your life. And so, make sure it's not an old story and that you're trying to force, because that's when you really feel resistant to it. And it's a very different thing than I'm persisting because, this requires a lot of hours. And what do they say? It's like 1,000 hours or something like that to become a master of something. I may be off on that number, but you get the idea. So persisting is a good thing when it's still in alignment with who you are. It's just important that we always continually check in with who we are, because who we are is shifting all the time. Like, who I am today is different than who I was when I started this podcast in 2015. And it doesn't mean there's not a lot of the same energy there and a lot of the same, at my core, but I've also grown and changed and shifted. And, we're all doing that all the time, and especially those who would tune into this broadcast, right? The type of person that would want to tune in and is working on themselves. We're shifting all the time. So, allow yourself to introduce yourself anew constantly. And sometimes that means I've already gotten the lesson or message from the particular job that I was pursuing or art form I was pursuing or relationship. And I don't need to insist that it continue in order to be successful. This idea of something has to last forever to be successful is hogwash, to use a technical term, and very, very different than persisting and staying the course and digging down deep when maybe you don't feel like going to the gym, but you know that it's good for you. And at your deepest core, you do want that. You do want to be healthy more than anything else. And that's when persistence really pays off. Going that extra mile when it's still in alignment with who and what you are. If it's something that continually is not in alignment with who and what you are, and you're insisting because of some story, really, I think it's so important to constantly reevaluate that. All right. So I did find a short talk where Bashar is actually talking about this very topic. Bashar, I was supposed to record with this last week and had to reschedule. So that's someone that I've really wanted on the show for a long time. And I think we're going to now record next month sometime. So stay tuned for that. So in the meantime, here's a little clip of Bashar on persistence of vision. Take a listen.
All right, good day. This transmission has been titled Persistence of Vision. We are exploring the idea of the difference between insistence and persistence. Generally speaking, just to give an overview, insistence is usually something based on negative belief systems, fear-based belief systems, whereas persistence is the continued focus, continued willingness to act on your passion. It is more of a positive idea of sticking with something you know is true for you. Now, of course, we are not saying that you can't use the word insistence casually, but like every definition we have discussed, it's important to understand the difference between using something casually and knowing what is really meant by its use, or really falling into the habit of insisting on things which are not necessarily representative of your path.
And for the person that has trouble finding their passion in businesses, they're saying that they've had businesses and they've failed, and that some people know their passion, but they're afraid to act on it. And what is it that makes it so this person can't seem to find their passion in their work situation?
All right, well, first of all, they have not failed. They have simply discovered a path that is not necessarily representative of the way that they truly wish to express their excitement. So they have learned things along the way, and that's all knowledge that may help them in the future, as you say. But the idea, again, is to always start simply and not necessarily have this grand idea that some overarching project or life-spanning career has to be representative of your passion. Any moment of time, any option available to you that's more exciting, even just the tiniest bit more exciting, more attractive, more curiosity-invoking than any other option, even just the tiniest bit, is following your passion if you're willing to act on it. Asking this question of us at that moment was the most exciting thing they could think of to do. That wasn't difficult. So in the next moment, after we have answered this and addressed this particular issue, what will you now choose to do? It doesn't have to be a grand thing. Just look at all the options available to you and choose the one that's more attractive to you and act on it to the best you can until you can act on it no further. That's all you have to do. You need to reduce the idea that it must be some grand vision. It will eventually snowball into something bigger, perhaps, but even if it doesn't, you're still following your passion by always acting on the thing that's more attractive and more exciting than any other option, even on what you might call a typical level. You're still living the life of excitement. You expect it to be grander or feel bigger is just because you have an expectation of the way you think it should feel. Allow yourself to feel that you are acting on your excitement as long as you're constantly choosing the thing, the option, the opportunity that is more attractive, more available to you, more curiosity-provoking than anything else. And as you just keep doing that, you will live a life of excitement and passion because you will attract everything you need. Simple as that. Sometimes, and I don't mean this in a negative way, sometimes it's important to reduce the scale of things so that you are within the comfort zone of what you believe you can handle. You may have gone into those businesses without an absolute certainty that you could handle them. Or again, you simply went into them to learn the things you learned by doing them, and that was the purpose of those businesses. Again, remember, it's not the goal. The journey is the destination. The process is the point. What you learn along the way, you absorb. You can use in other situations. So don't make it about achieving a goal. Make it about living in the moment and learning what that moment has to give to you. That's the important treasure that's buried in those experiences. What you get out of it. Don't dismiss them as failures. If you do that, you will not understand what the lesson was, what the learning was that's vital for you to live a rich life.
So I like how he says it here. Insistence is usually based off negative, fear-based belief. Persistence is continued focus and willingness to act on your passion. Big difference. One is still a passion. One is based off a negative or fear-based belief, right? And maybe an outdated story, as I was saying. It's so important, like you said, to not tell the story that you failed if you figured out a path is no longer for you. That's actually a win. You now, you're constantly, our desires are constantly changing, and a lot of times it can be really intimidating. You talked about like a work project or a career path. Starting as someone who's had a lot of grand visions and ideas, starting simply rather than the huge idea. You don't need to have it all figured out. You may have it all figured out, all the steps, and most likely those will shift along the way. But if you can just know the next step, what is my next step? Whenever you choose the most exciting path, allow yourself to feel you're on the right path. This ultimately, doing this over and over and over and over again, what does it lead to? A life of passion and excitement. So each day when I start, there's a lot of things I can do on my sort of to-do list. And I say, okay, what feels most exciting for me to focus on first? And that's how I approach it. And that works really well. And then it's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. You're learning to work with these energies because you maybe do one thing, and then that you have the gratification of checking something off your list. But then now the thing that maybe felt intimidating an hour ago now feels good because you've got momentum, and just taking it in bite-sized steps. Because if we look at it from such a grand view, it can be super intimidating sometimes. And like you said, sometimes you need to reduce the scale of things to meet your own comfort level. Where are you now? And realizing the journey is the goal, or I like how I put it, the process is the point. And if you're going through this process, you are enjoying yourself along the way. You figured something out. You've arrived. You are successful. If you're enjoying whatever you're doing, you're a success. And one thing's for sure, the more you're feeling that energy, that alignment, you're swimming in that vibrational pool, the more of that you will attract. That which is like unto itself is drawn, right? So this is the path, or as the Mandalorian would say, this is the way. With that being said, I do have a song to leave you with today. This is someone who's actually at High Vibe Fest that I really enjoyed. Tahum, Tahum. This song is called Moonflower. Until next time, journey well.